Hi everybody, so today's video I want to cover why you might be interested in permanent residence in South Africa, what are the advantages to obtain permanent residence in South Africa, how can you lose permanent residence in South Africa, and also which categories does the current legislation offer in South Africa to obtain permanent residence. Okay, so let's start with the first one. Why do you actually want to obtain permanent residence? Okay, I think the main reason is to have a secure legal right to reside permanently in South Africa, and you become independent from any law changes. Okay, so that's the most obvious one. The other ones is that once you obtain permanent residence, that you are equally treated as any South African when it comes to the labor market and certain other things. You can also apply for an ID book, which has a lot of practical advantages in South Africa because we have that centralized ID number for a lot of things. So there's practical reasons, security, and then in particular also you become quite versatile and you can do a lot of things. Okay, so that's why you want to have permanent residence really. How can you lose permanent residence? So you can lose it if you leave South Africa for more than 3 years without any visit to South Africa. You may, you don't have to, and it's not compulsory. But then the Department of Home Affairs can say, well, you kind of gave up your permanent home, and therefore, you lose your permanent residence. In practice, it doesn't happen a lot, and one visit every 3 years as a tourist would help. When you apply for permanent residence, however, it's very important that you really want to reside permanently in South Africa, and it's not just an option to obtain. Some missions, in particular one in Berlin, is really keen on this. They want to understand that you are capable of really moving permanently to South Africa, so that I think is an important point to remember. But losing it is really you absent for more than 3 years without any visit. And then there's a couple of other things. So if you become a really heavy criminal with a very clear list of very serious crimes, you also lose your permanent residence. And also, of course, if you buy it or obtain it through corruption and any other legal means, and they find this out later. And believe me, it does happen. Okay, so a few new ministers sometimes do audits, and they discover a lot of illegal permanent residencies obtained, and then obviously you also lose it. Okay, so but enough of that. I think the last one I want to just make, even if the main applicant is not maybe interested in permanent residence, sometimes for the family, for the children, it might be of high interest to become a permanent residence holder, because firstly, in most schools you pay local fees, and also if they want to have a student job as a bartender or some other job, they're equal to South Africans. They don't need a work visa. So I think sometimes while the main applicant might not need the permanent residence, it does sometimes make sense for the immediate family members. Okay, so how can you obtain permanent residence? Okay, so South Africa has a long list actually. In our Act we have 2 sections. I think it's number 25 and number 26 of our Immigration Act, which lists the reasons how you can obtain permanent residence. Now, in this video, I will not go into all the details and explain everything. We have subsequent videos for that. But I will, of course, list all the reasons and very briefly talk about it so that you have a good overview and find out if you fit in or not and qualify or not. Okay, so number one, I'm going to start with work. So based on work, there's 2 options. If you're a critical skills visa holder, you might qualify for permanent residence, in particular if you have a permanent employment contract and have more than 5 years of post-qualification work experience. Okay, so so critical skills work visa holders, they do qualify for permanent residence in most of the cases. Also, when you're a holder of a general work visa for more than 5 years and you have a permanent employment contract, you can also apply for permanent residence. Okay. You do not get permanent residence automatically by just being in South Africa for 5 years. So this is something in a lot of clients in my practice are asking me, but I've been in South Africa now for 5 years on study visas, so can I apply for permanent residence? No, you cannot, okay? So that doesn't exist. The 5 years you might be hearing is when you were on a work visa. And here I've become now very, very briefly a little bit technical. Now the Immigration Act is very clear. It says if you, the holder of any work visa, for more than 5 years and an offer of permanent employment, you qualify for permanent residence, okay? Based on work. Now, any work visa is also including the intercompany transfer work visa. Now, that's interesting because in the last, 6, 7, 8 years, Home Affairs has flat out refused to permit any former ICT holders to apply for permanent residence based on the 5 years. Okay, so they just say ICT is a temporary assignment to South Africa and therefore it does not count into the 5 years. Now, well, I would suggest that this could be nicely tested in court because the formulation in the Act is very clear. It says any work visa, and that includes the intercompany transfer work visa. In the legislation, there's no exception to this. So if anybody feels like you want to test this, I think you stand very good chances in court. But I warn you, if you just apply for it, it will be rejected. It's standard administrative practice to not count the ICT years. Moving on. So after work, you can also qualify for permanent residence if you're a holder of a business visa. So if you set up a business, if you founded a business, you invested from overseas a minimum amount, and you're a holder of a business visa, you also qualify for permanent residence. Okay, there's no minimum time. The important part is that your business is up and running, is compliant, and then normally the Department of Trade and Industry would visit you and then recommend your business for permanent residence, and then you can apply for it. The good news is that for 2 categories of permanent residence applications, the processing times is faster than usual, okay? And that's critical skills and business. We see a pattern that the Department of Home Affairs normally issues permanent residence between 8 and 10 months in these categories. In the other categories, however, the processing time is horrendous. We're talking 3 to 4 years, which is terrible, right? But yeah. Moving back to the options to how to get permanent residence. So it's work, we talked about this, business. And then of course, if you're married to a South African or a life partner of a South African citizen or permanent residence holder, you do not have to be married. South Africa protects the life partnership. However, there was years ago a legislative change and they added a requirement that you must be married for more than 5 years in order to qualify for permanent residence. You can come and join your spouse on a temporary residence, even when you're only 1 day married or 2 years in life partnership. But if you want to apply for permanent residence, you must be married for more than 5 years or in a life partnership for more than 5 years. Okay. Then also, if you're a child of a citizen, okay, if you're just a child of a citizen, you also qualify for permanent residence. I think that's pretty clear. Interesting wise, also, if your child is the citizen, okay, so your ex-wife or wife is a South African, and you have a child, then the child tend to be also South African, so you can apply yourself, if you're the foreigner, for permanent residence based on your South African child. Okay, so that's very important. It's definitely possible. And then we have another 3 categories. 2 are quite popular. It's the retirement, and the other one is the financial independence, and we will have different videos for that, so you can just look on our YouTube channel and click on the link. But I start with the financial independence. Financial independence has an asset requirement. Your net assets worldwide, not in South Africa, they don't have to be in South Africa, not a single cent, must exceed 12 million rand. Okay, some missions like in Berlin, they really want to see your whole assets, and they will really understand, you know, what you have and where do you have loans on, etc., etc. So other missions are a little bit more lenient. There is no requirement for a chartered accountant certificate confirming your net assets. However, we do strongly recommend to add to your application a chartered accountant certificate. This was required under previous legislation, has changed years ago, but we see a pattern for some missions creeping back in. I don't know why, but it creeps in, that they're requiring the CA letter again, and in the end you don't want to have a rejection because of that missing document. So we usually include it. So that's looking purely at net assets. It does not look at monthly income. Now the retirement option looks at monthly income, and it needs to be monthly income out of assets or a retirement annuity, a retirement pension, etc., in excess of 37,000 Rand per month. Okay, that's quite, I mean, I think a lot of government officials think that's very little. My experience is the 37,000 Rand per month is for pension income. A good level. You might, I mean, depending on the exchange rate to the euro, etc., you might be able to move it to 40, but you can't move it to 60 or 70. You're going to exclude a vast majority of applicants unless they're from Switzerland. Yeah, they tend to meet these requirements even if they would be double the amount, but that's Switzerland. The vast majority of our clients would not qualify for retired, so please, if there's any legislative changes plans, the Department of Home Affairs, don't increase it now dramatically. You will exclude the vast majority of applicants. So retirement looks at monthly minimum income, financial independence looks at worldwide assets. The last one is, which I didn't mention, if you're an acknowledged refugee, not an asylum seeker, an acknowledged refugee, you also qualify for permanent residence. So I hope you found this very useful. Please read the transcript and otherwise contact us for any questions. Also maybe look at the library for subsequent videos where we explain certain categories in depth. And thank you very much for watching. I hope it was useful. Bye-bye.